which is a lot of what he did. Our daughter Caroline was born while Don was actually still sleeping on our couch, and he always felt very close to Caroline. He would always mention, he remembers our bringing her home from the hospital, and he just always talked about how special it felt to see that new life beginning and how he could be there to see that life beginning. We later found out, in fact only a couple of years ago, that Michael and Ben, at least on a couple of occasions when Don wasn't home, had a little excursion up to the mother-in-law apartment just to see what it was like up there. We had never known that had happened. Don's Christmas present to our children each year was to keep them, he would take all four of our children to Homer's restaurant to treat them to a dinner, which was like so wonderful. They remember it as such a wonderful thing. And of course, Sue and I thought, if Don wants to take our four kids out and give up an evening, that sounds good to us. So Don moved out in about 1979, and we saw him less often after that. We would sometimes run into him. We, of course, heard a lot about Sue, Bob, and Barbara. We always went to the River City Fair. We heard about him when we would run into Deacon or Jerry or Billy and the people that knew Don. And then, kind of much later, as it were, I work at the Hoboken Charter School, and our school has what we call a community service partnership with Fritz Reuter Home in North Bergen. And during the last school year, the children had gone to give a little concert, and about a week after the concert, these concerts are held in a recreation room, and the residents of the home can come or not as they choose. It's voluntary. And about a week after we had been there, I learned through Maureen Singleton, sent me a wonderful picture of a photograph of Don with Barbara and Deacon, and that Don was now living at the Fritz Reuter home. And I thought, oh my goodness, I was just there. So I called the recreation director and said, I just learned that someone we knew was living at the home, Don Cotter. He said, oh, Mr. Cotter, he always has what did he say? He always has a humorous remark with kind of an edge to it. And I said, that will do, Don. So that's basically our remembrance of Don. As it happened when Don, Hugh had an accident last summer, and we were in a hospital in Norfolk at the time of Don's funeral, so we couldn't be there. So we're so glad that you are having this today to give us a chance to share our remembrance of Don. Our daughter Caroline is now married with two children of her own. One just 8 months old. Our daughter Anna has two children, and our youngest son, whom Don really didn't know, he was born much later, is also kind of pursuing a dream into performing arts. So it's kind of like a whole cycle where the part that Don played in our life is now coming around, and we just feel honored to have known Don Cotter.
I'll come out there and get you. That's quite a right. That's a par for Don.
I don't even remember when I met Don, quite honestly. I moved to Hoboken in 73. And through somebody, the first people I knew were the Kilmers, so that may be how I met Don. But I do remember hearing about the other side and the backyard, or the backside, or whatever, and going over there and buying a hammock for my backyard from the other side that was brought from Mexico or whatever. Don gets to you. He just grabs onto you. At some point, my second child was born in 1975, and he couldn't have been more than a few months old when Don found me somewhere and said, I have this great idea. We have all these rice sacks from Mexico, and we want to turn them into clothes. We'll sell them. We'll do a whole thing. How are you at designing clothes? And I said, give it a try. We'll try anything once. So we went, his whole group of guys from the other side, and girlfriends, cousins, sisters, aunts, wives, everybody. We all sat there and tore apart these rice sacks. You had to find the thread and pull them, till you could get them to flat fabric, and then they all had to be washed, and then they all had to be steamed. And at some point, he and I went down to the garment district and bought this enormous roll of pattern making paper, which I still have. I will never. I actually did a mural with a bunch of kids a year ago, and we used the pattern paper to plan the mural, which is like 30 feet long. And this stuff, I'm never going to be done with it. It's going to be there forever, but it's very useful. And we started making clothes, and some of them went into a little store that some people had in town called the Jean Scene. Do any of you remember that? And we had them there. I don't think we sold very much, but we had clothes. And we did this wonderful day, and I think it was in the Corman's basement, right? We had the photo session where everybody wore the clothes, and there was a very, very nice spread in the Jersey Journal about the rice sack clothes. About the same time, actually, it was a little before that, in '74, there was a first River City Fair before I ever met Dawn, and that was started by the Environment Committee, and it was on the long dock. And the basic idea of it was to make people realize what a gem Hoboken was, and to show it off architecturally, and show off how important the waterfront was. We had just managed to fight the group trying to put oil tanks on the waterfront, so it was very important to say this is going to be good as a recreation area. And so there were two River City Fairs, I guess in '74 and '75, and then the whole thing died. And it was just something we did for 2 years, and the Environment Committee did. Then one day, Don sees me on the street. "Come here, I have an idea." "What's going on, Don?" "Well, I want to bring back the River City Fair. I want to do it again, but we need a poster." "Oh, okay. But we're going to do 3 years. So you can think of it as a series of 3 posters. We're going to do 3 of these fairs. It's going to bring the waterfront, back, and we're going to have it all put together." "Okay, Don, I will commit to 3 years of posters." Then we found Peter Rosetta. Anybody remember him? Peter Rosetta had some silk screen. He did silk screening on the side. He did lighting, I think, for Frank Sinatra the rest of the year, so he was on the road. And so we did the poster, we did the T-shirts, and we sold them every year to try and recoup some of the money we needed for the fair. Anyway, 3 years stretched into 11. And not only did I have to do the posters and the shirts, but I pulled weeds and cleaned and all the rest of it too, because that's what you do. In between, the last time I remember really seeing Don was in the late 90s, when he had moved his business here into Hoboken. And he was still up to something, because every few years Don would call me with some idea or another. And the most recent one, actually this went on for about 5 years of talking, but we never did it, was some kind of calendar. He had lots and lots, somebody must have them, of pictures of old cars. I don't know what they were from. Does anybody remember these? He was so proud of them. He pulled them out and showed me every one. Oh, they were cars from the 50s and this and that. And the other thing, and I guess it's because his business was involved with transportation or whatever, so he wanted to make a calendar using these car pictures. And so every year we talked about it, and we never did it, but it was just some of Don. I mean, no matter how sick he got, he was still planning his next event, whatever that event can be. And it was a pleasure knowing him. A little crazy, a little fun, but really good.